what is the role of teachers, given that the school kids will spend a lot of time, at school, 8 hours. So do we involve the teachers and parents, or just teachers? So there's a lot of questions that we're looking at and asking. And the idea is to encourage and get people talking and speaking up, so that we are preventing, and instead of reaching out to us when the illness is there or the diagnosis is about to be made, we're looking at early intervention, and that's key. And I think that's part of our main messages that the campaign is trying to get to, is early intervention at early stages of life, so that we can avoid destructive behavior later in life. And also we want to, if anybody has any success stories of peer support groups that they've run, or if there's any suggestions that you guys may have to help us continue with this, like what topics we should cover in our how-to guides, what would our referral process be? So a peer support group would obviously not entail mental health professionals, like actually coming in and speaking, psychiatrists, psychologists. So we're also looking at having a referral process and a referral list for the adolescents and young people to use and actually go and seek assistance. But yeah, like I said, we're still at the early stages, so if you guys have any suggestions, you can come and speak to us after this. We'd really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll just do a quick closing. But yeah, I think the important elements is that it takes, as they say, a community to create something positive, and that every single person has something to contribute. Your background is important, and like we established yesterday, if you can if you can use your narrative and use your story and implement it on this scale, it is very valuable. So thank you. Please follow us on the social media platforms. Our hashtag is MyMindOurHumanity, and which is actually also the name of our Instagram page and our Facebook page. But also importantly, if you are interested and this is something that you find interesting, please also go online and look at the Lancet Commission report on global mental health. There are some incredible stats and a good overview globally of what we are facing in terms of mental health. So thank you.
So we just listened with Kiran, who started to talk to you about the toolkits that are available. Then we heard from myself and Grace and others about the reports that you can utilize for evidence-based advocacy. And now we move on to the last bit before we will start our group work, where we will understand and see how champions can be used for advocacy, and that is what George is going to be talking about.
Thank you. So give me a minute, we just try to connect this. Dance from our way to the So good. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Dancing.
Good morning.
So we're going to talk about advocacy champions. We're not going to talk about public figures. And mostly why we're talking about champions because they can play a very vital role in terms of the advocacy campaigns as young people that we organize. Advocacy is all about influence. Who you can influence, who you can reach out to, who you can reach to. And so champions usually have one very common characteristic. Before we go into the characteristic, I just want us to briefly talk about who is a champion. So I want a very interactive session of being very quiet, no question and answers, but I want an interactive session. So I'll pick on Shakira at first to just tell me any champion disregard of the barriers. Think outside the box. Any champion to you, when you hear a champion, who is a champion to you? Health champion, sport champion, any news champion. You can tell me what you think, but it would be a good example if you name it.
His name is Mark Hayward. He worked in Thanks, George. I was saying that in South Africa we have a very famous activist. His name is Mark Hayward. He's worked in HIV for over 20 to 30 years, bringing down the prices of ARVs, etc. And to me, that's a champion, someone who knows what they want to do, what they want to change. They dedicated to this no matter what, whether they paid, not paid, whether they will be threatened or not, that's a champion. But then also able to speak about the issue and represent people and ultimately draw influence, I think. So someone people look up to and garner support. For me, that's a champion.
Anyone else who want to share who is the champion here? Anyone else who want to share who the champion here?
Alright, so I wanted to speak on someone specific in Nigeria. It's called what he does, he has been working in the political space, so now he's sort of retired, and he has an executive Nigerian Entity Alliance. So what he does is he uses his position as regards having friends in the political space to bring advocacy to the table. So say there was a time last year, so moving towards the Asian, and we're trying to see how to get the president to attend and other officials. And it was being difficult going through the normal protocol. And he used his own influence to get an invitation and get forum, the alliance, to actually listen and submit to the letter, follow or something. So I think champions are able to get the message out and sort of be like a bridge to get
personal champion I have, who I share with a lot of people, I hope, is Beyonce. Everyone knows Beyonce, right? And hey, single ladies. Beyonce is not only a world-renowned musician, dancer, and beauty, but she also has used her platform to raise young black voices in all different areas. But a little known fact about her and her husband, Jay-Z, is that they have worked so hard to get help for incarcerated people in prisons, and so releasing them, paying their bail, getting access to mental health for them. So I love her. She's amazing.
So three more. You wanted to share?
Yes, I also share this about someone also in South Africa, and she is my personal mentor actually for them. I share this with them. But her name is Charlene Sandel, and she's kind of the reason why we both are here. But essentially, she is a person with lived experience in mental health. She was hospitalized and institutionalized for schizophrenia for a very long time. And she went through horrible treatment and eventually got out of that system, and she has used her own experiences to empower herself and do a lot of advocacy on a global scale. And she is a champion because she champions personal stories, and she champions people with lived experience and giving others a voice and providing them with a sense of accessibility to spaces that is generally very academic heavy and very closed spaces. So that would, for me, be an advocate.
You all can say my daughter, but that's heard from her. One of the things that I think has been most impactful for me as a parent is learning about diseases, particularly arthritis, which affects so many people, but that is not well known. It's not, mental health or childhood obesity or those things. And so I think that I was reading last night on social media a blog from a teenager who wrote about her personal experience just on her own blog, and it got millions of views because it was a narrative, it was a story, it was a letter that she had written to juvenile arthritis. And so she is a champion because she's not someone who's a celebrity in the Beyonce way, or someone who has the ability to connect onto stage immediately. She took an organization or a platform like social media and just posted her personal story in a beautiful, written way. And she has become a champion for arthritis because people don't know about arthritis. And reading her letter to arthritis was an incredible experience. And so you can be champion if you're not famous. You can be a champion through someone who uses tools that are not everyone's tool. That's an incredible way to be a champion.
So I'll take two last from here and the last from her.
Okay, what I was saying for champion, there's a champion in Barbados, her name is Faith Montreal Harris, and she's actually an attorney, and the work she's been doing has been nothing short of fantastic. Literally, she helped me. I was in my own personal situation, and she's been helping children who have been abused by the system. Literally, laws in Barbados that are not in favor of children. She makes sure she goes out there, she writes the policy, she writes the legislation, she sends it to them, they approve it. And she's actually just been appointed to the UNICEF Board on the Rights of the Child. And the work she's done, it's all pro bono, it's free. There are children who have been placed. I was in a mental institution for a minute, and I had no reason to be there. She was like, Pierre, you didn't have to be there. If she didn't come to take me out of there, I probably would be there for the rest of my life. And it's persons like that who don't have any personal connections, who don't have any pain to get out of it. We're literally doing it for the sake of helping the people they're interested in. For me, that's a champion, and I believe that's what we need as champions, advocating for NCDs issues.
Very brief.
I would say for NCD, specifically for mental health, challenge is that there's a lot of taboo around such diseases. And we live in a society, I belong to India, we live in a society where it's really difficult to accept the condition and really work on it. So for me, a champion is a person who is okay if he or she is talking about a subject which is taboo in that country or in that region for that matter, specifically mental health. So in India we have Deepika Padukone. She is a Bollywood actress and she has gone through a very bad phase of depression, and she came out in the open and she talked about it. She said it's okay to talk, it's okay to be depressed, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. So at least those words coming from her, and she accepting without being afraid of her image related issues, talking about it, because of course mental health is a big taboo in the society yet. So I think for me a champion is a person who raises about the stigma and taboo related to any condition.
So I had some key points before, but autocorrect did something. So, number one, what cause have they taken? That's one thing to consider when you speak about health, when you speak about sports, when you speak about... there is something that these champions have inspired you. Every champion goes through a fight. And why did I put this picture here? And some of you know, some of you do not know, but that was Mike Tyson back in his fighting days. But these champions go through different fights. And the most important part is they come out victorious. That makes you a champion. So it's disregard with what you're doing, but you can be a champion to someone which you don't even know about. And another thing is, a lot of these champions have die-hard fans and followers. So champions have influence. And these fans are willing to follow or do what these champions are doing because some of us believe we can do what these champions are doing. So this influence is what we are trying to nurture on. So talking about NCDs, and actually we're in Sharjah. So some of the global champions in Sharjah, for those who are from Sharjah, you need to really consider when you speak about non-communicables, they're mentioned here. I'm not going to each as specific, but one important component that I want you all to take a look at is the last part, which is the Youth Council of the Ministry of Health and Prevention. So Sharjah, I think, common to some of other countries and different to some others, has a youth component in its Ministry of Health. And when you want to speak about advocacy, one key important component that you need to talk about is these representatives who represent the whole youth of the country. So you are pushing forth an agenda, but there is someone inside the ministry who can directly relate to you as a young person. But you're trying to push for it whereby you do not have the influence, you do not have the power, and you do not have the mandate. But we also have some key important people who are in the global coordinating mechanism. But in the beginning of the picture that showed Mike Tyson, we say that you need to know your champions. So I just want, with a raise of hands, how many people know who this is? So I think almost less than a quarter of the room. So even if you met him, he came in here, you wouldn't know who he is, probably. So this is the ruler of Sharjah, His Royal Highness. So if you had an important agenda that you want to influence on the policy of Sharjah, he's one of the key people that you need to have on your champions list in your team. But also, how many know who he is? So I've just got one of his roles. He's the Minister of Health, and he's in the Independent Commission for NCP. And I didn't go into detail because of time, but champions can also be organizations and companies. A good example is the mentioned here, and they were doing free screening, non-communicable screening for diabetes, hypertension in different malls here in Sharjah and Dubai. So because of time, I'll just speak about one campaign. An example of a campaign that had important champions, and to an extent it was successful, is the Walk the Talk. So we saw Dr. Tedros, who is the Director General of the WHO, being a key stakeholder in mobilizing people towards this campaign. So we try to imagine if these three components were not there. I think maybe if we had decided to meet, it would have been 10 or 20 or 30. But because these figures were there, they were an important influence on who comes. Because one would come just because I want to see Tedros. Another would come because I want to see, so Haile is a champion, a marathon champion. And so one would come because I want to see how does he look like. So without these champions, sometimes our campaigns can fail. So you need to be very important on which champion you choose. And one very important factor that you need to consider is how do you bring them towards supporting you. So your agenda is very important. You can go to a champion who is a chronic smoker. You're telling them to fight tobacco, and they don't even want to stop it. They might be very influential, but they're not part of the agenda that you're trying to push. So their influence, what influence do they have? But more of a strategy. How do you reach a champion? Some of these champions have so many barriers such that the day that you wait until you reach His Royal Highness to have a conversation, might take 20 or 30 minutes. And so you need to understand what strategy can you use towards reaching a champion. But more than that is sustainability and long-term commitment. You might bring a champion towards your campaign and he has a one-time thing. But how do you sustain that? That's a very important thing. So I'm leaving all this in your minds to think about, but we can discuss maybe after our activity that we'll be having. We're supposed to engage in this, but because of time. So one last thing that you need all to remember is you are a champion to someone. You can be a champion to someone. You might be right here a champion to someone who is not saying that you're my champion. But not only here, back at home where you come from. As long as you know something that someone doesn't know, as long as you can do something that someone can't, it means you can influence something that can change their life. So you can be a champion, and you are a champion.
Thanks, George. So what we are going to do next is, when you've heard a lot about what resources are available for advocacy, how can you utilize the power of champions, we're going to divide you all in groups here in tables. We might just have a few people moving around a little bit, but each one of you is going to get like a guide, and that basically is helping you to develop your action plan for an advocacy campaign. So Kiran is distributing that on each table, and the focus that we want you to think about is just look at page 1 right now, where you as a group mutually agree to identify your issue or problem that you think you want to advocate for. Consider what kind of a campaign, advocacy campaign that you want. What is the outcome that you are looking through this campaign? And if there is a short timeline that you could describe to us, and how do you plan to make it a reality in terms of like an action plan. So we will be floating around in tables to help you, but we think that in about 15 minutes or so, if we can have a report back from the tables. As Michelle told in the morning that there would be mixing of groups, so we will focus on pages 2 and 3 of this when you are with the larger group. But I think right now it's important that you can identify the issue, what kind of a campaign, and what's the outcome you're looking for. So we'll be floating around. Any doubts, just let us know.
So just page 1.
Just page 1, yeah.
I think to the table that have two people can join together.
Yeah.
I
think you will And it's important that you identify who will be your group representative, because that person is going to report back.
I think one answer, one issue within the taking mental health as one of the issues would be that child obesity, of course, is number one in terms of problems, but we have been doing some action, and it is not topic that is restricted while we talk to peers. Yeah. So it is something that we do. So instead, other mental health is little tricky to do.
So the question is, first identify the issue what you intend, and then next, what's your expected outcome? So good at this table?
So I think what we're trying to focus on a bit right now is to identify the issue and probably have one solid outcome, because that will determine what your ask is instead of having a big
Identify mental health as your target area, so how do you describe the scope?
Right now,
But
a big concern because mental health is always more considered, exactly. So that's how we can
I just want to emphasize the issue and the problems that you're trying to formulate. So the more focused and pinpointed your issue is, the more focused your campaign. So the more broad it is, the more broad your campaign will be. So you can try to focus more on a specific issue rather than a broad issue.
Yeah, it's still going to get through that. Next question.
Because
this seems to be the ongoing problems.
Yeah, the problem we face is the problem.
Actually, here you're supposed to, you're supposed to write the problem. What is it?
You can rephrase it how you will to answer the difficult question.
So it can be stigma among those
Stigma around mental health. And we can be specific to reaching to this population.
What are the accommodations?
So the next question is, while making the campaign, do you expect to have outcomes? What type of campaign do you anticipate reaching? Briefly describe your work as a campaign, including the timeline, and
So I guess more kind of has that mission statement successfully education services.
change, So integration of mental health with existing cognitive response, and also linking it to the overall response. The problems with this you can probably state two. One can be policy change, the other can be So the second one could be destigmatizing mental health related issues in community. And the first one could be integration with the existing.
I would say besides the national outcome would be national level funding allocations for education space around mental health. More important is to have a national level support function so that
Not necessarily education, you might have Maintenance looks like
So obviously having those in schools will be more
So one of our policy where it doesn't exist, if it does, then it's integration with the license, what do you guys think?
yeah, exactly.
I think it's so right now what's happening, the challenge is that we're talking about NCDs. So the country has ultimately reserved. So the challenge is that NCD is one departure in mental health and that's a multiple sector. Now we are the integration. So that should be the outcome. At the end of it, this really looks like one whole. It's all
I was going to say that in a way, yeah, there's multiple strands of that, are coming into that, the engagement and the national level, I guess if we're doing more kind of aware about this issue, like it's still for depression or condition. So if that's something that can be addressed,
formal recognition of adolescent mental health as a
Although the thing is, we don't doing schools and families, right? Probably a bit wide now. So
for example, you have an opportunity to screen everyone around 30 minutes to screen. So a person who's physically incapacitated to get screened for disability. For mental health, the guidance where is interaction has been, yes, there is a problem. Is it having a shared methodology? These children are going through, they are having a casual conversation with the patient, and then they detect that there is a problem and they are able to establish, or if it's just the school that is providing that. So how is that going to
when you usually go stigma is so it's not affected because of it, but the people around it. So I feel that having community sounds like community come up with
awareness or
Are we saying that there needs to be acceptance in the community as to yes, this is the problem, but this is the problem with the
yeah, there's acceptance, but then there's now the action. What's the problem?
teaching how to do so.
So we need to have lots of one thing and then just things. So where might we need to talk about?
That's where I'm
in schools, it would be very good because we can even go to the practice after giving them education about mental health in the schools, and they can tell to their parents and their teachers, so we can see that the whole
figures that are so that would be supposed to be comics or music
Can we consider two points? One is there's a national NCD policy, of course, in place. Then there's a national rural action plan, which most of the countries have drafted in place, if not being implemented. But we are pushing for India for the longest possible time. But that does not talk about mental health at all. There's no mention. So can we do things like pushing mental health as an agenda in those national multidisciplinary action plans, which will of course guide achieving national NCD targets and then global NCD targets. So that integration could be one part. Also, another could be, I know schools are important, but here,
exactly like you said, they understand.
so it also includes schools, colleges, and young professionals. So workplaces are important. So we probably do like a setting-based approach, and instead of reaching out to the community directly, probably in these three settings, and of course some community-driven actions. So therefore, we have a policy, invitation or intervention that we're looking at, and also a setting-based mental health campaign that goes out to the classroom. So it's organized.
So have you decided on what you're working on? I've heard a lot of mental health. So what is exactly focus?
So the stigma around consequences of that's the problem that we're addressing, and we are wanting to target it through two interventions. Basically, one would be at policy level, which might be targeting the national NCD policy or mental action that we are proposing, and the other could be in various settings, also community level, with only the community conversations, talking about it, normalizing mental health.
It's going to be half time, so you have to push.
Okay, so if you're okay with it,
So just a quick announcement, we are at half time, so you have another 7.5 minutes to wrap it up and choose your representative.
So, I mean, from a local describe something we love as a national level. So we're going to design like a mechanism to stratify to one of those levels. Yeah, because if we focus on the national level outcomes, that will eventually trickle down into like the acceptability, and that won't happen. That takes time. Yeah, so I think what we do is we want to focus on the community aspect, like we're describing, might as well focus on like communities because government relations around advocacy. Hello, but in every landscape, is also critical that we work on the other piece because if this video opportunity is waste, then we'll have to reinvent it. I mean, if once this multi-sector election plan, if through the cabinet approves and it's in place, getting elected, getting this in that framework is, I mean, just a concept. So why don't we look at doing a nationally based advocacy campaign that focuses on like working together with people, and then through governments creating a bit of a go-round-table advisory group directly as partners with the campaign. So that kind of campaign.
I mean, for the second part, but for the we have two outcomes.
So briefly describe the report campaign to be a timeline for young and non-literate. Anything we say without a movement, there should be some interruptive, there should be ask for it, and then I think about the democracy, there should be an influence that we can use this policy, and for that, we can surely make a public movement around that, maybe using social media as well. Taking the strategies of the people who have already experienced the stigmatization due to mental health, such as other caregivers or the parents, even that's something very important which can actually be a stronger advocacy tool for doing the policy or improving mental health in the policy program. So now both relatively read out the outcomes. Recognition of mental health as a public health concern and activity with national multi-sectoral action policy. Spectrum to normalizing mental health organizations leading to workplace evidence-based approach that's made demand for individuals' mental health and So what kind of activity adding to a celebrity endorsement is for the maybe a celebrity as well, but also getting the grassroots level, like the people
whom they can associate with. It's also very important. Like a normal person, a group of people can be talking about it. That people exactly.
And leverage of creating advocate for the data and the campaigning
So in the offline campaign, probably we could do like community conversation, something that was done for the overall so like NC Alliance also had a values and policies. So because I conducted those community conversations, so I know that one of those conversations was people who were affected by mental health related issues and like issues. So this was the first time we come across the table and saying it's good to hear that there are other people also, because otherwise we don't talk about it as when we are like so probably we could have those small group discussions, small constantly communicating coming together and then there are gaps and how the gaps could make up. That's one of the activities.
How do you because we have it for
and that agenda from the Ministry of Health, from other important stakeholders, maybe Ministry of Information and Broadcasting community. So presenting it to them officially and then proposing some steps that together we can do this, and this is the kind of influence
They are absolutely intimate and they have merged together. One fund operating we are very much focused
should we do these community conversations in various settings then? Adolescents, how do you counselors, health professionals? So do you think that all of these stakeholders discussion exercise, 45 minutes discussion with this group coming together, and then we are trying to have a national agenda out of this, all the inputs that we receive? Or do we need to make more intention?
Make the space for adolescents to speak, and even if they speak to them, tell their parents or tell them other kids don't
So can we have these community religious organizations to the national media. Then, for example, schools, philanthropy, they're coming up to help schools. Yes, that's ready.
So taking for different stakeholders, like for different caregivers, for parents. So it's conversation starts, I guess, having conversations. Yes, but it's not just what I say, it's one thing to have a conversation for policy, and it's another to have an actual program of prevention that is providing education like messaging.
Last couple of minutes.
Like to give them that training, but if I have to get training,
We don't have to do this. Second application, second
It sounds like what you're describing are some of the ally-based stakeholders that we want to work with as partners to achieve our goals. And that's what they are through the implementation process, partnering with them to make sure that they have buy-in in that process. Their second page, but I feel like that's an important component to integrate.
I'm an Emirati. Do it. Are we behind time or are we in front of time? We're in front of time. We should do it.
Okay, who's the representative?
I think our
Okay, go
and then we can't read your handwriting,
So we are doing community conversations with advocacy days are also moving to a policy dialogue. Then we are doing with many goals.
Okay, so we are done with the time that we allotted to you, and we will start table presentations. So who wants to go first? Everybody has to go, and like I can pinpoint that. Okay, good. So what we're going to do is, like, you'll get about 2 minutes to present what your issue is, what your campaign is, and then we will open up for any important questions that you might have, and then move on to the next table so that there is peer feedback around.
Okay, great. Good morning, guys. Once again, my name is Pierre from Barbados. So, what we are looking at for our advocacy campaign. So basically, our issue, or what we looked at, is the unhealthy foods that are provided or available at schools, cafeterias, and canteens. There's lots of fried foods. There's not many healthy choices. There's soda pops and stuff like that. So by the end of our campaign, we expect to have a ban on healthy foods. So a ban on sodas, a ban on fried foods. That will also mean the integration of healthy foods, because you can't take out one thing and not put something else. take out sodas machines, replace them with water coolers, water fountains. So what type of campaign do we anticipate launching? We're looking at having an awareness and advocacy campaign so that schools are aware of the problems that these unhealthy foods can cause to children. So that's where we're going to, what our campaign would be like. So we would have first rating the schools so they know how healthy or unhealthy their schools are. Then an awareness on just how these foods affect you. So going into schools, talking with the children, letting them know when you eat this much junk food, when you eat this much fried food, you become lethargic, you can't function in classes, you can't get the grades you want, you won't feel as happy. Then we go on to mobilizing the community. So basically, if the students know, if the teachers know, if you go to PDA meetings and let the parents know how the foods are affecting their children, they will in turn be like, we need this change. We need to have this change in our schools. We need unhealthy foods out of it. Finally, for the timeline, we're looking at 2 to 3 months. That'll give us time to plan, to know exactly what we want to do, how we plan to do it, what schools we want to go into, who we're going to talk to, exactly what we're going to tell the students, exactly what we're going to provide for them, because we can't come with a campaign and say, we want unhealthy foods out of the schools, but then when we take them out, what are you going to put in? We're thinking again, so we're going to need enough time to plan all that. And yeah, that's our campaign.
Questions? You are within time. Questions? Okay. It's switched on.
That's an excellent presentation. I was just really curious about the timeline.
Yeah.
2 to 3 months. From your presentation, it sounded like a very ideal campaign.
Yeah.
But remember, this industry are going to be fragile.
Yeah.
So what's your plan? This 2 to 3 months?
Yeah, to be quite honest, the 2 to 3 months, we would have to tweak that, because actually what's happening right now, what we're doing, we're in Barbados with our program that we're trying to do, we definitely have a problem with fast food enterprises battling us to have their things advertised in school and have all their products placed in school. So yeah, we're going to have to take that a little further so that we can strategically plan how we're going to deal with the backlash we might get from other enterprises who are interested in having their foods and their fast food in schools. So yeah, that's a good point. Thank you.
There's a question there.
Yeah. So you talked about banning unhealthy food. So I would really be interested to know, how do you define the unhealthy food? Because in some of the communities, even the homemade food is unhealthy. It comes with a lot of oil. So how are you going to define the unhealthy food, and how are you going to tell the parents or the teachers that what's healthy and what's unhealthy?
Okay, so this is where policy comes in, where we have a criteria which sets, okay, these are the standards we expect in schools for the food that you're serving. There are certain foods that children must have that are good for their learning. There are certain foods that we know are good for helping children develop. So these are the type of foods we need you to have in your schools, in your canteens. That is where we get to tell them, okay, this is what we deem as healthy for schools, and this is what we want you to provide for students. So we're not really going to say, okay, this is unhealthy, that is unhealthy, because children might say, I go home and I have that. So instead it would be, this is better for your development at school, this is better for your learning, this is better for your productivity, and this is what we want you to have in your schools. So that's where policy comes in, helping us to create the change that we want. Yeah.
Any more questions? I'm willing to take one more before we move to the next room. Okay, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
So we have the next room.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so So the issue or problem that we intend to advocate for is we want to focus on mental health. That was the topic that was chosen for children, because we focus a lot on adolescents and young people, but we forget children. So children is mental health with children. Okay, so by the end of the campaign, we expect to have, so we've got 2 outcomes. One is a short-term goal and the other one is long-term. The short-term goal would be to do capacity building and accessibility to resources, and that would be like reaching out to teachers and children, caregivers or parents, so that when the child is ready to speak up and they're going to the parents or the caregivers, that there isn't that block or the bills, like a brick wall where they can't get through. So we kind of want to reach all those other partners as well. And then the type of campaign is we're looking at a top-down approach, where we will be appointing mental health champions. We'll look at mass media, and we'll then do workshops and talks and conferences. So for our timeline, the policy brief, well, actually I think I missed something, sorry. Our long-term goal is to reach, go to a national level and look at getting a policy made in place specifically for bullying and violence and other forms of harassment at schools, which obviously then relates to the mental health issues. So for that we're looking at a year for the launch of that, and then for our short-term goals we're looking at 6 months.
Questions for them?
No questions?
Is it a perfect campaign?
It's a perfect campaign, we got it. Thank you.
Okay, so who wants to go next? Okay, Raj.
Hi, I'm Prachi. We chose the similar topic. It's, I think that's how it's going to work. So unhealthy food beverages, mental health, health issues, these are the So our problem statement would be that we would like to focus on the stigma around adolescent mental health in schools and communities, because of course it is not being taught really efficiently. The outcomes that we expect, one would be at the policy level, the other is at the grassroots level. So the policy level would be recognition of mental health as a public health concern by integrating it with national multi-sectoral actions that are being taken. So after the countries have adopted national NCD targets, supposedly they are also mandated to develop national multi-sectoral action plans, and mostly for most of the countries, action plans do not talk about mental health as such, so getting it integrated there, because anyway action is being taken, there are certain interventions that have been proposed, so why not also talk about mental health with those interventions. And the other one would be normalizing mental health related discussions at community level through a settings-based approach. So we thought schools, colleges, workplaces, and of course communities, because we are also talking about young professionals here, which I believe there is some amount of stress and deteriorating mental health with that kind of population also. So the stakeholders, I know that was on the second page, but we have tried to list them, would be parents, teachers, counselors in schools, and workplace administrators. So the campaign would be done in an offline and an online mode. In the offline, we thought we could do at country level community conversations with people living with mental health conditions, both affected by and their care providers. These community conversations would then lead to the development of a national agenda of these people, which will feed into a policy level dialogue, which should be held with people across the table from various health professionals, these people living with mental health conditions, as well as representatives from the ministry, and probably we thought one of the important stakeholders would be Ministry of Information and Broadcasting in this sense, so bringing them on board and getting out media in the sense the content of what is being played. So that could be one of the entry points. Bringing influencers on board, because that really helps in this case. And also one thing that we took from the presentation in the morning from the Lancet Commission's report, the toolkit that you mentioned, toolkit for mental health, for implementing interventions in schools. So we thought, because this would be a long-term activity, so for 12 months initially we start off with the school level activities, but we also implement this toolkit and disseminate it at the school level, and would like to recommend it to the Commission that such toolkits are also made for other stakeholders, including parents, counselors, healthcare providers, so that we get widely distributed. So thank you. Any questions?
Questions for this group? Perfect campaign. It's very perfect. Yeah. Okay, the next group.
Just one. Because the angels doesn't fly with one wing, so we are two. And male and female, and a youngster and an old man like me. So we were thinking about if most of us are expert in tobacco control, so and we thought that we have to train high. So we have a problem. You will present the problem.
So we want to look at how the tobacco industry is targeting youth, especially young women and girls. We want to focus on the global report which talks about the messaging of the tobacco industry on women and girls and the avenues that they use to address them. So for our campaign, the outcome we expect to have is both top-down and bottom-up. So we're also looking at women and girls at the policy level and how the tobacco industry is affecting that at a policy level, and what the policymakers should be knowing about the tobacco industry interference. And we're looking at the grassroots level, where we want to teach women and girls in the school setting, the community setting, and the workplaces, where they're aware about the effects of smoking. They know where to go to be able to find help for quitting smoking. And they're also capable of becoming change agents and dispersing that information on platforms that we may not be able to reach through our campaign.
Okay, actually, so we have two components here, the monitoring part and the education part. And in order to know or to know the outcomes and how the campaign is perfect, we will come out with the reporting of the monitoring campaign and the number of societies which we will target. We were thinking about targeting youth and women and child societies, so they will be allies with us actually, and in pushing the policymakers to implement the law or develop the law if there is no law talking about banning advertisement, for instance, which is the main issue in targeting youngsters and women, as we mentioned. So
the campaign will actually be, for the first 2 to 3 months, we plan on collecting data around how the tobacco industry is doing this, how they are addressing women through kiosks, which may be selling something else, through finding them at shops nearby, from schools and dramas, and also online content. So looking at how films are targeting women, how streaming content is showing smoking to that entire cohort. We will use that data to A, design the media campaign, which will be on the grassroots level, and B, to also use that data for policy advocacy at the higher level. Then we will design the campaign, which will take about 1 or 2 months for the messaging development, and we envision 6 months to run the campaign. So we're looking at about a 12 to 18 months window for the entire campaign, depending on how much money it allows us.
Regarding the money, actually, we thought about digital campaign because it's more cheap and it reaches out more, and it includes youth for sure. It's easy to be used, and for sure we will target. We will go to schools, as we mentioned, also to societies. We will conduct meetings, depending also on the money. Okay.
How would you address cultural aspects?
Yes, we are
Okay. This is the first.
Yeah, so actually we were wondering about how smokeless tobacco also has a large cultural presence in at least where I come from. And we would like to start from the existing programs. So we already have an adolescent health program in India, which will allow entry of tobacco awareness campaigns through that school program, and then try to reach communities and societies which don't have access to information. So, but cultural aspect will have to be included as part of the development. But I think it's something that we want to test the waters and then move on.
Actually, we talked about the e-cigarette, which is popular all over the countries, actually, for sure. But some places like UK is allowing, or it uses e-cigarettes, regulating it or something like this. But other countries are not allowing it, so it's culturally sensitive. This idea or this project would be culturally sensitive for sure. Yeah. Sure. Each country will develop in the process of monitoring and collecting data. This will be there will be a baseline assessment or baseline information.
Okay.
My question is, actually in some countries, there are some young people who don't have access to internet. There are some young people who are not in school. There are some young people who are on the streets. How does your campaign reach out to them?
We'll go to the TV.
No, we spoke about that as well. And this is really the low-hanging fruit that we spoke about, because schools and communities on the digital platform is one of the low-hanging fruits that we can capitalize on. And it has to then, the ball needs to get rolling. And once it starts to get rolling, then you can identify. So I know of a campaign in India which uses IVRS, which is like telephone recorded messages, which people can dial using their phones, and they get to hear a story. And it is through that story that they raise awareness about health issues. So there are creative ways of getting to people who do not have access to these resources, but due to time constraint and money constraints, maybe this is a way to access something which is easily available and then get the campaign rolling from there.
Actually, we talked about including youth and peer-to-peer effect. So if we have some youth in the campaign, they will reach out to people in the streets, or the child in the street or something like this, and woman who's not in schools, as you mentioned.
We have 2 more questions. We listen to the questions. Yeah.
It's good campaign.
Okay, so I apologize if you guys did say this and I didn't hear it. But you said your problem is for young girls and women. Why specifically women and females?
Why specifically women and girls?
Yeah, like why? Yeah.
Because we find that gender is a cross-cutting issue across all health issues. So, a lot of policies focus on boys and on men in general, and they also don't focus on caste and class. And we find that women sort of are the lowest rung in that. So, in India, for instance, a Dalit woman would be the lowest person, which will not be reached by any of the health campaigns. And that is something that even in this conference has come up fleetingly. I've seen NCDs and women being mentioned on the Knowledge Action Portal, but that's something that you don't find too much of research on. So how women present certain diseases, how women, bedside manners for women and for girls who are historically alienated from education due to cultural reasons, religious reasons. That's why we want to focus on it.
Also, there is enough evidence that tobacco industry is targeting women and youngsters.
Okay, so the last question.
Sorry, I have 3 questions, one of which has been asked, so I have 2 more. First, like how you gonna monitor the tobacco industry interference, and are you gonna do it from the tobacco industry mapping? You gonna do it, or you gonna do it from the government's point of view, like how they are, kind of handling the tobacco industry? So how are you going to monitor that? And also, there is a political will to do the advocacy campaign. So in SDG 17, which promotes partnership, so that says that there should be CSR activities for which the tobacco industry finds a way and promotes tobacco in one way or the other. On the other hand, the Ministry of Health is kind of, doing tobacco control efforts. So how this campaign would be substantial to do a policy change at that level, at the global level.
Okay, thank you. The monitoring part, we will monitor everything because it's easy to develop checklists and train some people, especially youngsters or youth, to follow the newspaper, to follow the online material, maybe the tobacco industry documents. We will watch, as you mentioned, the CSR activities for the industry, points of sale. We will monitor also in drama. It's an observation part.
Hence the first 1 to 2 months of collecting data as to the access points which the tobacco industry has to reach women and girls, so that we can create a repository of where all they're able to reach women and girls, and also learn from other efforts of tobacco industry interference. So wherever there are countries who are trying to monitor the FCTC protocols and how the tobacco industry is not
letting that be implemented, that would be a good starting point for us to look at whether women and girls are also beneficiaries of those access points.
And there is many tools of tobacco industry monitoring. With the most famous is the Siatka tool. It's very good. Could be online actually tool or
maybe Asta can lend us her thoughts on
because
she's worked extensively
yeah,
on that.
so we have worked on this Siatka tool, and we have developed this for India, which has been included in the Asia TII Index 2018, which was released at Epic last year. So we
Does
have
that
done
have
this.
a component on women and girls?
No, it doesn't.
Well, so that's a starting
generally
point.
talks about the tobacco industry interference, 5.3 implementation in different countries. So it's very generic.
so leave your name with her because we will hire you in
We work
our
together. We work in the
you
same
are
office.
consultant here.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, last but not the least.
My name is Casey and I'm from the United States. Our group decided to focus on sugar-sweet beverages in schools, specifically in the U.S. And I made an executive decision that we would focus even more narrowly on the state of Georgia, since it's in the U.S. Just because of the regional variation in the U.S. I think it would be easiest. So we would hope to limit the availability of sugar-sweet beverages in schools and provide healthier options. And we did a very brief policy analysis of the policy environment in the U.S. and decided that bottom-up approach would be best. So we decided to do a series of workshops on healthy alternatives focused on school administrators, hoping that they would actually decide on a case-by-case basis to stop providing these sugar-sweet beverages within their cafeterias. So it'd be a year-long campaign where we would start off with a social media campaign and hopefully garner support among teachers as well as students and parents especially, because in general there are a lot of places where people don't like the government to be telling them what to do, so if there's that grassroots support, we think that would really help our campaign. That would be followed by 2 or 3 regional workshops within the state of Georgia with school administrators, telling them about the benefits of sugar-sweet beverages and why it's important for the health of their students, but also why it would be a cost-effective option for them. And then following that, we would have follow-up support for those school administrators, helping them kind of navigate some of the challenges that they might face, including kind of negotiating out of contracts that they may have with beverage companies, which is an issue that we have in the U.S. And hopefully that would lead to a statewide change, kind of like a culture change, that students would be drinking these beverages.
Thank you. Any questions for Casey? Thank you. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming to this session. I hope the information that you received in terms of what tools are available, what you can use, repurpose for your campaign were useful, and we will continue the advocacy piece discussion in the common meeting that happens at the end of the day. Thank you.
Because I've always been inspired to have you and met you. It's beautiful.